So thank you, Professor Fong, for inviting me again to the Global Business Forum, and I also want to thank Bharat and William for hosting me. What I thought I'll do is give you a perspective which is very different from what you probably saw from speakers from Fortune 500 companies. So I'll share my perspective from growth firms, and I'll also contrast it with the the corporate world as well. So I think hopefully it will be perspective that you don't normally see. So what are growth firms? If you look at the size of the US market, there are about 30 million businesses, which is a lot of businesses. Most of them, actually about 24 or 25 million of them, are non-employer businesses, meaning they don't have any employees. They are basically single person businesses. And about 5.5 million businesses, they have employees. That's the data from US Department of Commerce. And if you look at the size of the businesses, 96% of them, or a very high percentage, have revenues which are less than $1 million, and they stay there. And some of them make the leap to greater than $1 million in revenues, and then obviously a tiny minority, 0.4% of all the businesses, ever get beyond $10 million. And then obviously over $50 million in revenue, there are only 17,000 companies. And the last one is basically about 2,500 companies. They grow beyond 500 million in revenue, and of that obviously 500 or so are in 5 billion plus range. So very steep climbing curve. And in fact, if you look at it from one to the other, there is something called Valley of Death, which my friend Van Harnish mentions, which is a lot of these businesses, they basically go under before they go to the next step because they cannot make the leap. In fact, when I started the company in 2000, I was almost certain that we will probably go under before basically in 10 years, and certainly will never reach 10 million in revenue, because knowing what the odds are, I was pretty realistic about the business I was in and what we were trying to do. So it's a tough climb. Professor Mintzberg, he basically teaches at business school in Toronto. He's an American as far as I can tell. So if you look at these 28 or 30 million businesses, they fall into basically the first three categories. He also mentions another type of organization, which is the political organization, which I'm not discussing here. But the first group it falls under entrepreneurial companies, right? So these are basically smaller businesses built around an entrepreneur or a business owner. And most of them are small businesses. So this is your corner dry cleaning store. This can be a grocery shop, and obviously some of them are larger in size. And they basically are run by a single person who comes up with an idea and is able to operate in a niche which is in many cases protected. So it can be geographical niche, it can be a political niche, or something like that. The other one most of us are familiar with is the machine organization. So machine organizations, these are organizations we love to buy from. They offer great value, great service, consistency, built around efficiency. It's great to be their customer. It's very tough to be working there, because a very few number of people, they make all the rules, and rest of the 100,000 employees or 200,000 employees have to follow them. Or in the case of Walmart, million plus employees have to follow them. Very few people make the rules, everybody else has to follow them. The other problem with machine organizations is that even for customers, they have rules. So for example, another local machine organization is a company called Costco. They have rules. You can buy only certain sizes. As a customer, you don't want that, but that's the rule. You have to be a member. You may not want to pay the membership fee, that's the rule. Right? So those are the downsides. But they offer great value to the society and very efficient, and there are more and more machine organizations around the world. The third one is what he calls project-based or innovative organizations. He also calls, some other authors have called it ad hoc racing. So these are basically two types, again, internal and external. So internal organizations, basically they are working on projects which are innovative in nature, very unstructured, normally focused around technology areas. When I was working at Microsoft, there were a lot of basically products that we worked on. The teams come together for short duration, 18 months, 2 years. After that, they disband. So obviously, they don't call it disbanding the team. They just say, hey, we have a corporate reorganization, and then pretty much everybody is out of a job. They have to find a new job in a new project that is starting up. Generally, a new leadership takes over, and people that performed well stay with the project or the new project, and things like that. So very uncomfortable in that sense, because there is not a lot of certainty, and very fast paced, very unstructured, not the most efficient, right? Because there is duplication. But the nice thing is the ideas can come from anywhere in the organization. It's not top down. In machine or in entrepreneur, it's basically top down. And the next one is obviously the external, which is what is very common now as well, which is our kind of organizations. These are external consulting companies. So we are working for projects for basically our clients or customers. So in terms of strategy, a lot of these organizations, the strategy comes from outside, from external environment. In other words, I don't get to decide what the strategy is. I have to adopt what the strategy is. So in our context, which is a technology business, I did not invent the cloud. I did not invent the mobile. But we are using those technologies to provide solutions based on those technologies. So that's the idea behind these consulting organizations. The risk in these organizations is obviously feast or famine. So sometimes there is a lot of work, and then there is no work. So team is idle for some of the time, and then obviously when the project is over, you better have the next set of projects lined up. The other risk is obviously the customer perception or the client perception. Hey, these are the mainframe guys. They don't know anything about cloud, so we'll go somewhere else who specializes in cloud technologies. So they will not even consider you for the new kind of work. So unless as a company or as a management team, you make a conscious effort to make the leap to the next one, you'll never be considered even for that kind of work. And I think for this talk, missionary or political organizations, they are out of scope, but they are an important element as well. And Professor Mintzberg has described it pretty well. The reason I share this with you is when I was doing my MBA, at least I was not familiar with these types of organizations. So I'll be working in one without realizing how they worked. And me and many of my coworkers will complain about things that were supposed to be that way. It's just that I didn't know it, and nobody explained it to me, and I didn't know how to understand it. So this, I think, is useful information as you think about it. So coming back to growth, there is the Fortune magazine for large corporations. They basically handle the top, maybe 1,000 or 500 global, the largest companies. In the mid-market, there is the Inc. magazine, and they have a basically ranking which they do on annual basis of 5,000 fastest growing companies revenue-wise. And as you can see, in the last 9 years, since 2007, they have published this list every year, and there are only about 20,000 companies that are unique in that list. It's slightly more than 20,000, but something like that. And about half of them have been listed only once. And if you look at the extreme right, you'll see only 97 companies have shown consistent growth year after year. They have been on that list, and that's a tough actually place to be on, because we are growing consistently every year. You actually want to buy from these companies. If you have services or products that they offer, you want to buy from them because they are doing something right. We started using a company about 16 years ago when I started, a company called Sure Payroll for our payroll services. They were on this list throughout. Over the years, they got sold. they became part of Paychex. Now we are looking for the next company that is on the list. So we are moving to another company called Paylocity at the end of this year. That is again has been on the list consistently because they know something about business, how to service the customers, because it's again very tough to grow. So then the question becomes, why are only 20,000 companies out of 28 million on the list? Why growth is so hard? Why businesses are unable to grow, right? And they face valley of death before they even move to the next step. So when I think about that, basically the growth basically comes in two flavors: good growth and bad growth. So instead of discussing bad growth, let's discuss good growth. So there are four attributes. There is a management consultant. His name is Ram Charan. He has written a very famous book called Execution. Right? I'm sure you're familiar with that, with Larry Bossidy. So he basically describes it as four elements. The first one is profitable. You have to be profitable for you to sustain the business. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. The second is, if you look at the Wall Street and some of the analysts, they give higher rating, higher stock price valuation to organic growth, which is internal growth, not through acquisitions. The third one is basically consistent growth. So you want to be on the list again and again and again, as opposed to one time you're on the cover and then you're gone. Because it's very exciting to be on the cover, but for employees, for customers, for management, it's very difficult because you grew so rapidly that you did not really have time to put systems in place. You did not have the cash to manage the operations. So you run into all of the issues that are typical of running a business. So you want to be a boring company at some level where you're not in the news. It's the same old year after year, and that's very hard to do. In fact, Jim Collins, who used to be at the business school at Stanford, he has written a book called Great by Choice, where he contrasts some of the companies which have grown consistently and tremendous return for shareholders and customers and all that stuff. And he basically talks about 20-mile march every year. So regardless of the economy, regardless of the external conditions, you want to walk 20 miles. And he gives a very graphic and vivid explanation on how they were successful in doing that. And the last one is differentiated growth, which is basically, when I talk to senior managers, when I talk to our project managers, they say, hey, we are in a commoditized industry. Everybody else is selling the same thing. The only differentiator we have is price. How do you compete in that market? The only way some companies are able to do that consistently by differentiating themselves in that crowded marketplace. And generally, they are the ones who have most of the profit, most of the growth, and are able to sustain. So if you think about our business, we are surrounded by the global companies, Accenture, IBM, and obviously Indian IT majors. Many of you have heard of Tata, Wipro, TC, Infosys, a lot of the other ones. And then there are at least 10,000 that you have not heard of. Very fragmented market, basically very low barrier to entry. How do you compete in that market? So essentially something we have to be able to do on consistent basis to be able to offer that growth. And that's not easy, keeps us busy, but that's the kind of high performance organization we want to be part of. So he talks about basically building blocks or the culture required to have sustainable growth. So the first one is, if you want to grow the company, we have to grow the team. That includes me. Most senior managers think they're like me. They think very high egos. They think they pretty much know all the answers, and they have most of the answers. They are probably the smartest guys in the room. But the growth has to start from there. So this is the biggest learning I had over the years. The second, obviously, is customer continuity. So any business that is growing has to hold on to their customers. Right? Customer churn is, as you know, very expensive and hard to acquire new customers and all that. The third is speed and how quickly we are able to adapt to external market conditions. Because as I mentioned, for innovative organizations, strategy is not decided by me. It is decided by the external market conditions. The advances in computer industry, we have to adapt. So we have to really do it faster than our competition. We have to do it better than our competition, and we have to do it with the people we got, not people we wish we had. So that's also very hard. Then obviously, like any business, depending on the type of business, there are investments that are needed that we have to make annually. So they can be in plant, they can be in machinery, equipment, whatever the industry is. And then obviously focus on productivity, because that creates value for our customers. And the last two I did not really understand, because again I did not know much about business when I started the business. Is the ecosystem, how important that is. So initially we used to have confrontational relationship with our suppliers. So it was a zero-sum game. Over the years I realized that for us to grow, our suppliers have to grow as much, if not more than us, both in terms of capability and in terms of their size. And many cases that didn't happen. Many cases it did happen. And where we had productive relationship, instead of flipping suppliers, we were able to basically work with them to get the outcomes we wanted and become more successful, climbing on their shoulder as opposed to taking them down. And that is same thing with banks. We are not capital intensive, so they really play limited role in our success. Obviously, where we are able to recruit from, so having those relationships. So at UW, we have been here every year at all the 4 career fairs for last 15 years. Unless we were too late to register, which happened this time, but generally we are there every all of the 4 spring, the fall and the summer career fair. And then obviously advisors. So these are super important. One of the things I did was basically we used one of the top law firms to set up the company, which at that time, as I said, I didn't think will even last 10 years, but anyway, over the years it has served us well to have the right structure in place and obviously be tax efficient. And then similarly along the way we had to develop or find coaches or business advisors that could help us grow in certain areas which I did not have much expertise in. So I'm on to my last slide, which basically is more advice as opposed to lecture. So one of the challenges I think we face, and many of you probably already experienced it, is understanding the difference between corporate world and entrepreneurial world. Because at least when I was working in corporate world, I wish we were more like entrepreneurial world. And now we are in entrepreneurial world. A lot of our employees feel that they wish they were in corporate world. So we cannot be what we are not. And just wishing doesn't help us. So when I was in corporate world, obviously things were slower. One of the industries I used to work in was appliance industry. It was very bureaucratic. Speed was, if you wanted a meeting, usually it was held next month. That was the suggested time frame, not the next week. When I shifted to Microsoft, it was basically next week. And now obviously in last 15 years, it's next day or same day. Pretty much that's the speed of business across the world. So I think you can pretty much read through some of these things. Only other thing I would like to mention, actually 2 other things. One is in a lot of the corporate world, it's basically there is a lot of due diligence and there's a lot of analysis that goes into before you make a decision. So there's not a whole lot of emotion that is involved. Whereas in entrepreneurial world, it's really a lot of emotion as well as reason. So it's how the senior management team, in most cases, it's also me, how I feel about a particular issue or aspect. That's basically what happens in the company. Whereas in the broader context, it's a lot of it is reason based. So not necessarily good or bad either way, it's just what is happening there. The other is, the second one is about results versus time and effort. So in corporate world, generally it's how much time and effort you put in, because really the results you will not even see for years. Whereas in entrepreneurial company, there's not a whole lot of room for error. If you didn't close the deal, if you didn't make the sale, there is no food, nothing to eat. So it doesn't matter how much effort you put in, but really results matter. Whereas in larger corporations, what I did on day-to-day basis was so far removed from the field or the reality that I had no idea that I made a difference. I think I did, but I don't know. And the only other one, I guess, that is important is the last one, which is the abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset. So the way decision making happens in a lot of corporations is that you create a scarcity mindset. So you have a budget pool that everybody has to compete for, because there are a lot of good people who are competing for the same resources, whether it is dollars, facilities, programmers, whatever the case may be. In basically smaller entrepreneurial companies, we have to have the abundance mindset, which is find the positive NPV project and let's go fund it. So that's the other difference. So I know I did not, so that's pretty much, that leaves me with about 20 minutes or so. I don't know how much. Yeah, so we can open it for questions. I know I did not talk a lot about India. I spend a lot of time, almost 2 to 3 months every year in India. I just got back last Sunday, not this Sunday, from India, visiting our offices. So I'm happy to answer questions about pretty much anything I know. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the beginning of your career? It seemed interesting you went from Electrolux to Microsoft. Was that a product of working at Electrolux and seeing a need for high tech and being drawn to it, or were you always drawn to that?
Yeah, so Electrolux, I was basically I joined AB Electrolux, which sells appliances in the US under the brand name of Frigidaire and Tappan and some of these companies. So it's basically, it was third or fourth player in the market. So the other big ones are GE, which actually is now about to be acquired by Electrolux, and Maytag at the time, and Whirlpool. So Whirlpool and basically Electrolux competed. So for me, the transition was I wanted to basically work in high growth industries, high performance industry. Appliance industry was basically more of a mature industry, manufacturing oriented, not a whole lot of change. So every 10 years they came out with a new product. So I was in a cycle, every 10 years there was a new model of washing machine. And that also, the only change we were making at the time was put electronic controls, which are very common pretty much in the companies. And really the only differentiator we had was price, because people bought appliances mostly on price. So after my MBA, basically I shifted to Microsoft because I had a lot of expertise when I was working for Electrolux or AB Electrolux. So I was working a lot with computer systems. I was a mechanical engineer, but I was mostly in CAD CAM. I knew a lot about the software industry by then. And when I was doing my MBA, I thought a lot of the manufacturing companies will be interested in me. So I applied to Ford, General Motors, all these companies. They didn't hire me. And then I applied to these high-tech companies, and all of them wanted to talk to me, which was surprising to me. So here I am. Yeah, go ahead, Will.
You had mentioned that when you were starting out with your company that you saw the odds were against you and that likely weren't going to last. So can you point to anything as to why that wasn't the case? Why you didn't fall into the
Yeah.
of death?
So I'll draw upon my MBA experience. So when I think about what MBA did for me was that I was able to basically not worry about the buzzwords. So if somebody said, hey, corporate strategy, this, whatever you saw, I didn't use many of the buzzwords in my presentation today. I was able to see through it, and that gave me the confidence when I started the company. Pretty much I did everything that people do when they are not thinking long term. So people will ask me, what is your exit strategy? And I never had one. I said, my exit strategy or plan B is, if this business doesn't work, I'll buy a gas station and run a gas station. That's all I really can afford to do. That's all I know. So with that mindset, I did every day basically I worked to reduce the risk, because I knew it's very easy to go out of business. So how do you reduce risk in the business? So obviously keep your burn rate low. Most people, they basically do the other way around. I knew marketing is important, but we did not spend a whole lot of time or money on marketing. You saw the article in Seattle Times. Even $1 million advertising budget or PR budget cannot guarantee you that kind of success. We spent $0 on that. So it's just basics, just have a mindset which is very counterintuitive. And I know today we are in a startup world and a lot of people are talking about all the things, but they are really, think about it, they are really innovative organizations taking advantage of technologies, working on a project. Some of them will pan out and become Uber and whatever else. 95% of them, they will not pan out, because they will not be able to put it all together. So in my case, I basically worked every day to reduce the risk of staying in the business. So if we couldn't afford it, I wouldn't say we bootstrapped it. I mean, we were well funded because I could fund it, but we kept our burn rate low.
Rajeev, I'm curious about how you think about globalization in conjunction with the idea of reduction of risk. It seems like many of the speakers that we've talked about have talked about how capital intensive and time intensive and energy intensive it is to, as you're developing a product or putting structures in place, to think globally at that initial time. And it seems almost to go counter to thinking about how you're going to just stay alive one more day. How did you think about that as you're developing it?
So I discovered globalization, to be honest, by accident, or out of necessity, or maybe both. So when I was in Michigan, obviously globalization was the talk of the day. All the business schools were talking about that, and I'm like, okay, whatever. But in 2000, when I started the business, we needed to hire some programmers, and we couldn't hire any. So then I had a business partner at the time. His name is Darren Quest. So we were in the business school together. So I told him, hey, give me 3 months and let me see if I can set up a team in India and see what we can do there. And I had never worked there really, and I had never really known much about how to do business there and all that. But I was able to go there and spend some time and build a team, which was obviously low-cost team, and it gave us time. So we were able to do a lot of research and innovation out of our facility there. So obviously ours is not a capital intensive business. There are businesses which require a lot of capital and they're racing against time, and Amazon probably would be a good example like that. But we are not in that business. I mean, all our teams are fairly small. We are able to overcome that and fund it as we grew along. I mean, I do not think of it as a sprint. I think of it as a marathon. So I'm in it for 25, 50 years, not for 3 years and flip it. A lot of those guys, they probably are racing against time because of that urgency. So I don't know. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I noticed that one of the aspects of the ecosystem for sustainable growth is a recruitment pool. Kind of building off your last answer, how did you get a recruiting pipeline to your startup business, and how did you overcome that hurdle as you grew?
Yeah, so recruitment, is very hard. It's probably the hardest thing we have to do every day. How do you do that? And how do you do that over the years is very hard. So, okay, so now we are into philosophy as well as management advice. Okay, so first thing is when you are starting out, or when I was starting out, I met one of my other friends. He did his MBA from Michigan as well. But anyway, so he said, look, Rajeev, you're not going to get A players to come work for you because you're nobody, right? They will go work for some large corporation or whatever. You're not even able to, you're not going to even able to get B players. They're already taken. So really you have to work with, good people, but you have to see how you can manage and deliver outstanding results with them. So that's where management comes in, right? Take basically, and it's not just me. It's Rockefeller said that, and Andrew Carnegie said that also on his tombstone. They have that saying which says, "Here lies a man who knew, how to recruit people better than him and get them to do the work that superior people could do." So that's basically what we had to figure out, how to put up systems in place or set up systems in place, high performance systems in place, so that we can get a lot of work done through even inexperienced people, because that's really all we could hire. So they were looking for opportunities that they wouldn't get otherwise, and we had work to be done. Then when we advanced, and now we are obviously more mature, is having basically describing and clearly articulating the opportunities or the role they are going to get at our company in our kind of organization. So not everybody wants a slow-paced environment. Not everybody wants certainty. A lot of people are comfortable with ambiguity. A lot of people want to do a lot of things in a very short span of time. So we have been able to build a high-performance organization around that. So obviously we are not, any company of any size is really not dependent on people, a specific person. But in general, we have a pretty high caliber pool. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the results you saw, right? I don't know how many of you noticed, but we were on the list 7 times, which is only 300 companies on Inc. Magazine's list. And I'll take number of times over the rank. I don't want to be only once and then be gone. I want to be on that list again and again. But over time, now it's obviously easier for us. So we are well known. We have a lot of resources that we can offer. We obviously can pay well compared to a lot of the other larger players because they don't need to pay as much, but we obviously have to pay more. So a lot of things we are able to do now that we couldn't do early on. But yeah, early on life is tough and you have to work with people you got. Yeah. Sorry.
Question about your thoughts on competitive advantage. So few of those companies make it to $1 million or then on to $10 million in revenue. And it seems a lot of them, that's probably because they don't have a competitive advantage. So what are your thoughts in terms of, for you guys, what was it? And for other small businesses that are in that sort of $1 million to $10 million range, where do they find that sort of competitive advantage?
Yeah, so in my case, I was from outside the industry. I didn't know any better. In terms of consulting, I never really worked in a consulting company. So the competitive advantage I had was I didn't have any bad habits. I only knew what made common sense to me. So in our context, we use a lot of the agile development techniques, and we have been doing that since 2000. In fact, the reporter from Seattle Times, when Brad Dudley, when he visited our office, he wrote about that in the article which got published in 2004. He actually visited us in 2003, so very early on in our company, stage of our company. And we basically showed him how we did the work, and that was our competitive advantage because we were able to do work quickly. Only now it is becoming mainstream because I don't know any other way to get work done. Whereas a lot of the other larger companies, they had established clients, established systems, processes. So they needed years. We were able to find basically a niche. There was an unmet need to get certain things done quickly in a lot of the sales and marketing organizations. We were able to focus on that and deliver solutions that larger players were not interested in. But really, competitive advantage doesn't last very long, as you know, right? Whatever we have can be copied by anybody else very quickly. Whether it is customers, employees, you hire one of our employees, they will tell you everything that goes on in our company, right? They will have all the expertise and all that. So it is really constantly we have to keep on reinventing ourselves and find new areas of efficiency. So that is why all of those things come together. So, I don't believe in luck, but we as Jim Collins says, when we got a lucky opportunities, a lucky break, we took advantage of it. In that sense, we were lucky. Seriously, chances of us going under are higher than staying in business any day. So I'm really paranoid, scared. And Andrew Grove wrote that book, right? Only the paranoid survive. So it's really very tough, very hard. Yeah.
When you first started out, how did you gain your initial clients, and then how has that process changed in the past years?
Yeah. So when I first started out, so we do a lot of work for Microsoft. That's where I used to work. In fact, a lot of the entrepreneurs, they do work for their former employers. So basically, I reached out to everybody I knew and see if they had any work. So one of the first projects we had was only $3,000 in revenue, but she needed the work done, and I had enough credibility that she felt she should give us a chance. So I'm still grateful to her. Her name is Stacy, for giving me that break, or giving us that break. And I think over the years now, a lot of the people I used to work with, obviously, they didn't have any work for me to hand out. But over the years, we developed a reputation mainly by delivery, because that is one of the things I think a lot of people undervalue, especially in services world. 90% of the suppliers are unable to do or keep their commitments to their clients. So if you are just able to do what you are told to do or what you committed to do, we are golden. Really, it's so basic. And since I used to work in marketing, I really realized that, look, unless you have strong delivery, marketing doesn't do anything for you. I cannot go ask customer for more work if a previous project is failing or failed. Right? They will, you will not be able to do that. And once they see us in action and they see you in action, they come back to you for more, because again, they have the same problem. As I was talking about suppliers, they have the reverse problem. How do you find good suppliers who are reliable, who are consistent, who are able to keep up? It's a huge problem. All service areas. It's more difficult than you would think, but it's just hard. So I'm not dissing on marketing. That's what we do. It's very important, but you have to have very good service to back it up. Yeah. So let me ask Meghna. Yeah.
So you were in a great job at Microsoft. What really led you to go ahead, quit that cushy job, and then go out and set up your own company? And second, how did you go about forming the team? Because we hear a lot on, first you have to have a great idea, and second you need to have an even better team to execute that idea. So how did you go about your partnership or doing that?
Yeah. So most entrepreneurs, they start their company because they don't like bureaucracy. They don't like processes, procedures. They want freedom from that. And that's what I was looking for, because the amount of impact I felt I could make on my own was probably more, which turned out to be true. I wasn't, at that time, if you had asked me, in 2000, I would have said sure, definitely, but I'm not sure how sure I was. Then the second is basically idea and the team. So frankly, I'm less excited about the idea because ideas keep on changing, and you have to keep on getting new ideas as the time goes. Whatever we are doing today is not even close to what we started out with. That is true for any corporation, including Microsoft. And forming team initially, as I said, you have to work with who you can get. So initially, we were fortunate that we kept our bar high in terms of team members. So even when we were hiring, we only went to the best schools and tried to hire the best people. We lucked out in a sense that right after I started, there was a severe recession in 2001, 2002. So hiring was relatively easier than it is. In fact, the recession is a great time to start a business because everything is cheap. To build a business, it's a great time, but obviously it's depressing, right? Because all you hear is bad news. So you have to just have the grit and just stay alive, and just have faith, I guess, to ride the recession. But if you survive that, we survived two large ones, obviously 2007, 2008. It was so brutal. I have not seen anything like that. And I've gone through many recessions over the last 25, 30 years. It was really unnatural almost. But we were lucky. I mean, we were, most companies, their revenue went down 10%, 20%. So if our revenue went down by 10%, people told me, hey, that means you grew by 10% because everybody else went down by 20. That's so bad. It's all relative, I guess. So I know Bharat had a question regarding cross-location team management and motivating cross-location teams. You still have that question, or?
Yeah, I was asking, when you started the company itself, you started a team in India. So I think somebody alluded to that. How do you kind of inspire them when the clients are sitting in the US 12 hours away?
Yeah. So, so basically, it's a team motivation issue. So a lot of us, we get motivated to, see the results of our fruits of, labor or whatever we are doing. How does it impact our clients and what it does for them? And that is true even if our team was local. So there are several things we do about that. So one is all the work that we do is visible to our clients on daily basis. So we basically publish it to them either on internet or on their intranet and all that. That's the agile model we always had. So we are able to get instant feedback or daily feedback back to the team. So that basically helps them understand somebody is interested in the work I'm doing, somebody is looking at the work I'm doing. Because half the time we do the work and nobody looks at it. Nobody cares. So that is very demoralizing, right? Because you don't even know what's happening and you're so far away from that. The second is obviously we have frequent interaction with the team members, both they sometimes visit our clients in the US and vice versa, our clients go visit with them in India as well. So that is becoming more and more common. And the third is obviously video conferencing. So that is becoming more and more common. So that distance or the fidelity of that communication or exchange is improving. And as I said, when I started 15 years ago, that was a foreign idea. Most people didn't really, you had to explain how you can get work done remotely. Now it's pretty much because of open source and all these technologies, pretty much people are spread around the world. And the only difference in our case is time zone difference. So it's more accepted. Pretty much all the corporations have discovered India. So you don't have to explain that story anymore. It's just, it's really surprising. As I said, when I was in business school, I didn't even think that would be possible. Or that's even realistic. And now it's pretty much everybody assumes that's a reasonable thing to do. The other one was regarding motivation. How do you inspire or motivate the team? That is, basically same thing. Have high quality work, obviously recognition, and frequent communication. All these things we could all do better. In fact, my second book is around that topic. It's a lot of different things. It's a complex. Humans are complex, and motivating them is even more complex. Motivating them for a long time is even more complex. Because what motivates me today may not motivate me 2 years from now, because my competency has changed. So once I mastered those skills, I don't want to do them again, right? So it's a complex thing altogether.
Thank you so much, Rob. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Okay.
This was a really great, I don't think our students have really been exposed to the long-term view of the high-tech global world. And so this was a really great perspective for us to add to our class. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.